This will be a good one.
It'll be a good one.
Definitely a different type of process.
Cut down or freeze up.
Being a coach's son.
Jackson, of course, they keep retooling. One stone to face, a hit by pitch. Oh my goodness.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Hitting Zone podcast. That's where we smile when we approach the camera when we go live. But another episode. I think we got to be pushing 20 episodes, 18, 19, maybe somewhere around there. We keep on doing things, man, and that's a big shout out to Game 7 Baseball, game7baseball.com. They got their schedule out, their spring schedule. Go check them out. And we have our Super 7 that I believe is listed. Is that correct, Bryan? Super 7's out there? Yep. And so if you got a 14U team and you want to inquire, I think we're going to have 24-plus teams out there. And so if you want to get out there, make sure you contact Bryan, contact Dave, and get you on there. I'm going to try to get my team in it. I got to be invited as well. So hopefully he invites me and we do well enough. But Game 7 Baseball, game7baseball.com, and then our friends over there at Prime Sports Midwest, which I think on the 17th is their grand opening. Is that correct, in St. Peter's store? Yep. So go follow them on their socials and you'll find out information. I'm sure they're going to have some good deals over there, and you'll find out what their bat demo is coming up here shortly.
Goat Athletic product, first product offering at the grand opening.
Grand opening, Goat Athletic, greatest of all time, I'm assuming. Will be one of the first offerings out there at the event. So go out there and check them out. I don't know the address over there. I know it's on Mid-River Small Drive. I think it's like 75 something. 7505. Mexico Road. That's our engineer over there just making it happen. And then 1550 Ocello Drive, that's where you kind of work out of, isn't it?
Yep. That's
Yep, Champions Village down there in Fenton. But anyways, I got a special guest today. And this man I've known for a few years now. We brought him in for, he came in, he asked me about a camp. I kind of know you in a roundabout way because he coached with one of the guys that I played ball with growing up in Mike Tallis. You guys had that young Spikes team when you guys were like 10U, and I think that was for maybe your oldest kid.
Right. I think where I know you mostly from is from the gym, though.
Club Fitness.
Yeah. Right.
Well, there's always the gym, and everybody knows I like to talk, so I'm going to talk to all the fitness guys out there, and this man is in some pretty good shape. But anyways, I'm going to let him introduce himself and his business, and then we're going to get going with some conversation today about catchers.
Yeah, I'm Bryan Patterson. I'm actually, I guess, first and foremost a youth coach, so 13U Nationals coach, owner and operator of P2 Catching, and then P2 Baseball Army. So we do all kinds of private training. So we do catching, we do hitting, we do fielding, just anything you can think of. We don't have anybody on staff that does pitching per se, but other than that, we kind of cover all the bases with that. So
is the P2 Army, is that something that is just like the subscription, or is that more like that is your hitting and
that's kind of
other side
overall encompassing type?
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, business part of it, and then the catching was the first to come, and then we just kind of encompassed it when we did the hitting and the fielding. So.
You've done a really nice job on your social media side, I think. And I'm assuming are you doing it yourself, or do you have some help?
No, not at all. No, I'm scared to have to be here right now. So I'm not like a big social media guy or whatever. So it's just kind of happened. Literally, I've hardly done anything. It just kind of has grown from throwing some videos out there and showing what we do and everything like that. So was fortunate enough, I was actually trying to put a catching training video together, and so I needed some help with it because it wasn't going very good myself. And I ran into MEM Videography, Mark Mate, super cool guy. He's just up in Wentzville, Missouri. Check him out if you need anything done video wise as far as advertising or whatever. But anyway, I went out there.
You know that's what we do here, right?
Okay, well,
not
to throw one, but I gotta let you know, man. He's a good dude, he really is. But anyway, so I went out there and talked to him, and he actually corrupted the file that I gave him that had all my stuff on it, and I'm like, well, this is like a perfect storm because now you owe me something. And so we just kind of hit it off like that, and he takes his time with the stuff that he does for me, but he comes down to videos I don't know, about once a month, a couple times a month or whatever, and get some footage for us and puts it together.
So back to kind of the P2 thing. And when I first started following you, I was like, man, I know that guy from somewhere. And it's like I didn't connect all the dots. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. He started talking. I was like, yep, Jim, Mike Tallis, you guys had coached together. And I'm assuming maybe trained together because I know that he's a big body guy.
Yeah, I mean, we just mutual friends.
Oh, I got you.
With them or anything,
I got you.
Yeah,
That's fair. That's 2 alpha males for sure.
There you go.
I know.
And actually, just summer ball and stuff, like picking up and playing against the Spikes and stuff. So we knew him against there too. So he's actually a rival. And I think, you used to play with Spikes?
Yeah, up until I was 39 or 40 years old.
I mean,
so we've had some run-ins.
That's a long time ago. So, or at least seems like a long time ago.
You know, it's only 4 years ago, and the time flies. But I can tell you, my body feels like it's aged about 15 years. I'm going to lead into this because you are into wellness, overall wellness, general wellness. You lift a ton of weights. You're in shape. You care about your diet, and I know that from things that when I played, I used to have people tell me all the time, like, you need to take care of your body. You need to stretch. I'm like, man, I'm 15, I don't need to do these things. I'm 20, I don't need to do these things. I'm 40, I'm broke. And that's why I quit playing baseball, is because I couldn't move the way that I used to because I didn't take care of myself in several facets. When I was younger, the nutrition, I could eat 4,000 calories and it was being burnt because of the way I was working out, the way I was playing. But now if I eat 4,000 calories, I guarantee I'm going to be 300 plus pounds. So, times have changed and I wanted to get into that part of it because I think it's a big facet of the game that we don't talk about enough because we're not outside running and jumping and doing various things. And so for you, just as the Army, the P2 Army and what you're trying to do, how important is wellness, which, included all the nutrition, the weightlifting, the mobility? How important is that? And even at what age do we start that?
Yeah, like we focus a lot on like hip mobility and stuff like that, particularly for the catchers and everything like that. We've got such a wide range of kids from, the age of 10 all the way up to 17 years old, 18 years old. They start getting older, they've got to start taking care of themselves, So, I mean, like once that puberty streak hits and like they start turning into man, turn into a young man, then they need to start worrying about a little bit more about how they eat and taking care of their body. But I did it really ultimately because I was a young parent. So I had my daughter when I was 21, and I wanted to be able to show her that I knew how to do the things, once I got a little bit older or whatever. So like, just try to keep care of my body. And there's no secret to it. I mean, it's just hard work and like kind of being able to eat clean and do the things you're supposed to do. But, ultimately, that's each and every kid's kind of own journey that they have to take as far as, how much time they put in the gym or whatever. And some people are more naturally gifted than others and so on and so forth. But I do know that the weight, the size, the strength, going into college and stuff, these college coaches want to see college players when they're in high school. They don't want to see real skinny, frail kids that are going to have to pack on a ton of weight when they get there because they want them to jump right in and do what they need to do. So I think that the more they're prepared, junior, senior year in high school, and they really start hitting the weights and doing what they're supposed to do and get their bodies, to maximum potential as far as what they're capable of doing at that point. That's the name of the game. So.
And I think with all the data that's driven these days, and we're getting information, I think you're starting to see more of a change and I don't know if it's through social media or just in general, but the change is happening across the platform of like looking at the size of the athlete, right? So when Major League Baseball released this thing, maybe not Major League Baseball, maybe it was somebody that did all the grunt work, but the average athletes per position, and it was like, your first baseman was 2-something, your second baseman's 5, the average is 5'10" and 185, and everybody talks about guys like Jose Altuve and Judge are two different ends of the spectrum there, but look at how thick Altuve is. He's not, a 5'5" or whatever he is, and he's 110 pounds. He's 5'5" and 165, 170 or something that he is, and we're getting that information. And so I think you're starting to see a shift in what's important in some of our training and trying to encourage nutrition as part of the growth process because these kids just want to throw hard, right? And I use pitching a lot because I think that's what everybody thinks their way to the big leagues is to get into college education is through the pitching side of business, which you'll be shocked at how important catching is, And so if you're a 15-year-old or 13-year-old kid and it's like pitching or catching, I mean, you know what I mean? They need 4 catchers, so you're going to spend time as a freshman catching bullpens, but by the time that you're down the road, you might have a better shot of being a catcher than a pitcher, and you can always transition back.
And I don't know when that switch clicks for those kids, because for my experience, everybody always wants to be a position player no matter what. And some of them used to go, man, I don't know where you're going to end up at. You got a great arm, but I don't know exactly how athletic you are out in the field and play defense or whatever. But there's some point in time where that shifts over, and they start kind of putting their eggs in a basket as far as how hard they can throw and stuff like that. And we were just having a conversation before you came in here about just the whole demographics as far as how things have evolved and how everybody's trying to throw for velocity and so on and so forth. And man, I'm not arguing against the point that you shouldn't do that, especially with all the technology and spin rate and all the different kinesthetic things that we can do through video and stuff like that. But at the same time, give yourself an opportunity to mature, let your body mature, do the right things. And just let those things kind of take care of themselves as far as progressing down the road, right? So
yeah, and I think it's our duty as a coach to make sure we help parents out with that. If you have a kid that's 78 miles an hour and he's 14, 15 years old and he's on the verge, but he's 155 pounds, we do know, we do have information that says if he's 165, 170,
you're going to throw harder.
We're going to throw harder, yep. And it just continues to grow as we grow. And some of that has to take time. I have a young man that's 17U, and he grew 6 inches in the last year. And so he hit maturity a little bit later. And one of the things that I loved about him was he threw soft. And ton of strikes, got a lot of ground balls, weak contact. You pitch him 2 or 3 innings, that's it. But, now all of a sudden he's got a little bit more velo. He's a little taller, he's a little thicker, and I'm I don't know that I like it because now he throws BP fastballs. Right. He threw under it before, so he missed a ton of barrels that way. But anyways, I just think size, has to go into this or that conversation, and it's our job as coaches, and you could obviously be different here in your thought process, but it is my job to say, hey, listen, I don't need you to go out there and max effort and be so rotational. You're going to throw your arm off, and throw it out in the third base dugout, but I need you to understand that it takes a commitment to the gym, to the time in the cage, and then just mentally developing too.
Well, see the parallels between that and hitting. You're not quite there yet as far as physically, but that doesn't mean you can't be a good hitter, have good mechanics, have good play approach, good discipline. Same thing with pitching, right? It's all relative. So it's how many times you hear people talk about, these kids maxing out at this, they're maxing at this, they're maxing at this, they're topping at this. Yeah, but they're just topping at that. They're not consistently hitting that, right? So if you're going out there and you're going max 100 effort, 100% every single pitch to try to get that, it's not going to do anything but tear you up.
Yeah, that's how we sell it, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
As we're both instructors and coaches in the private industry, and so it's I have to show that I'm getting my guys there, and I do think sometimes it bothers me knowing that they're more 3 to 5 miles an hour less than that through 85 pitches. But it is to show growth. It does have some value to it. I just don't hold much weight, with that, and kind of getting into just the technology side in general. There's so much of it, right? In baseball, in the hitting side and the pitching side, how much technology is in the catching side of the business?
It's new, right? You're thinking about a totally different approach over the past 6 to 8 years. Realistically, even up through the major league ranks. We had Andrew Keck come down to a camp of ours down at the Nationals Academy last year, and he was giving us all kinds of information on the Atlanta Braves and so on and so forth. And he was they're actually mandating guys to go 1 knee down now and doing stuff like that. So this is all new territory. So I don't even know if they absolutely know what they're doing half the time. So you see guys totally, there's no standard for what some of these guys are doing. Now they're athletic enough to make the moves and do what they're supposed to do. But I don't know if anybody's ever come out and just say, hey, this is the standard for catching. This is the standard for this. So if you don't have a standard for it, it's going to be hard to measure that.
Do you spend a lot of time on things like transfers? I know technology like Hit Tracks has some transfer times, with some footwork stuff.
Yeah, glove to hand transfer and with footwork and and so I guess I'm a little bit more old school when it comes to stuff like that. I'm not old school in my approach. We do drive receiving, 1 knee down, all that good stuff. A lot of guys that I know that I grew up with or played against, they were great catchers, but they didn't necessarily have all the information as far as how to kind of center that approach. That doesn't mean they're wrong, doesn't mean they're bad guys. It means they're just a little bit more old school. I'm not old school necessarily in my approach, but I'm old school as far as the metrics are there and you can use some of that. But overall, like we're trying to get results as far as there's 3 different facets that we're trying to do. We're trying to block, we're trying to receive, and we're trying to throw. So the throwing thing always shows up on like the academy or the exposure camps and stuff like that, because that's the one thing they can really measure.
Yeah, right.
And so like we have to have a baseline for that. The thing is that like they cheat so much, it's absolutely ridiculous most of the time, So like I like the glove to hand transfer. It gives you good solid understanding of how fast they can get rid of the ball. But you could have a kid that throws 83, 84 mile an hour behind the plate, and you have another guy that throws 79, but he's got a way better transfer, way better feet, and he can make up that time.
Yep.
So like the arm strength doesn't become as important as it does just like overall pop. Like I think in the major leagues, they say some of these guys are throwing 74, 75 mile an hour down to second base, but they're just so freaking fast. It's unbelievable, right? Now that's not the Mutos and guys like that have cannons for arms.
Cannons.
Right, but it isn't always like that, right? So it's a little bit more subjective, I think. And I think a lot of times, like once you get these guys that are throwing downhill, high velo like that, they're going to be coaches, especially college coaches, are more apt to pick guys that are good blockers, good receivers, and even maybe good throwers, because you can hold. If these pitchers have good holds and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing on the mound, then that's going to take away a lot of the running game right there.
Yeah, for sure.
And not to mention they don't run as much as what they used to. Like nobody does. So
I thought, we have guys that do. We have some speedsters, like your obviously 50 stolen bases with your boy Shohei over there, Bryan, for the Dodgers. But when I think about the game in general, I look at guys like Real Muto, which I think my favorite catcher right now has to be that Bailey kid from San Francisco. And he does not throw like a typical catcher. He kind of three-quarter throws.
Well, he goes all different kinds of arm slots when he throws.
And it's crazy because all he's doing is just being an athlete. Right. So if the pitch takes him wherever he's at, he's in and out of his glove super fast. And that's what we try to teach everywhere. When you turn a double play, we want it in and out of the glove. We don't want time in the glove because that means something. The transfers are bad, the footwork's bad, we fall over our feet. So it's got to be in and out of your glove. But that Bailey kid, I watched him throw like they did. It's on Instagram and stuff, and I watched him do a highlight. And he threw from down here because the pitch took him there, and it was on a knee.
Right.
And all he did was lean over and flick a ball. And I bet that baseball went 75. It was on the button.
You remember about old school? You remember old school like Tony Pena, Benito Signing, snap throw to third, snap throw to third. You know how to spin the ball. You get good stuff happen.
Yeah, so, that's the thing. That's what's I will say that like going back my I had a guy who was a family member who was a kind of a catcher and played college baseball as a catcher, and I had Tony Pena, I had Betty Santiago, we're the same age, so and I was like, man, I want to do this, so I would try to kick my leg way out there and look like Tony Pena, or I think even Mike LaValliere might have got a few times that he was out there, but those are guys that I mimicked, and I was told, nope, you can't do that. And I'm like, there ain't nobody on. There isn't nobody on. I'm not doing anything. I'm going to be able to work up through the ball. I didn't know those things back then were going to eventually be a huge part of the game, like right now. And the one knee catching, we saw it in the playoffs where it impacted some teams big time in the playoffs, especially in the World Series. And these are two good catchers. I don't know how to feel about the one knee catching. In the big leagues, I understand. In the higher level colleges, I understand because the pitches are probably more consistent and not throwing the ball in the dirt or throwing it 6 feet high. How do you feel about the one knee style catching in like your 10U to 13U, 14U?
Yeah, I went back and forth for this a long time, and so like I just kind of eventually say, hey, this is what it's going to be. So like let's make them as efficient as possible and do it the right way. And you see a bunch of kids. There's some real super athletic, just special kids out there that can do it. But I think that a lot of times the younger kids, they think that it's an easy way, like it's an easy out. It's they do say that whatever as far as being less tension on your setup and things of that nature, and the rest of your legs or whatever. Not really. It doesn't, because like you're moving your hips in a different way, and your hip mobility is going to become extremely important when you do it. So you get some less athletic kids, a little bit heavier back behind there, and they're just kind of plopping down on one knee. They're going to have all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
So I think that it just kind of is contingent on how athletic the kid is. Normally with the kids that come in with us, it's like man, they might want to start. First of all, I always even ask, like, if they're younger, like, ask their parents, like, what are you all doing? Are you all like trying to do this? And if they do, then I'm like, well, we'll show them how to kind of work from it. I always recommend that they don't try to go out of a 1D down stand secondary where they're runners on base and they're going to throw out of it until they know that they can block. They know they can throw efficiently off their knee and pop up and do whatever they do, or at least transition from 1D down into their traditional secondary to throw down to second. So it just all depends, really. It depends on the athlete, but I think that the way that things are going now, everybody's going to have to learn how to do it because that's the way that this way the game's going.
We're going to have to be better at pitching then, because I mean, the youth side, I watch a kid that cannot get up, and this is the piece that bothers me, right? So I try to do it myself, and of course now that I'm older and my knees don't work the way they used to, I love it. And if they throw the ball over my head, I don't even try, right? I don't have to because it's practice. But I think that laziness somewhat falls into the game sometimes, and it's like, man, I'm just whatever. I'll have kids that get down on their one knee that come to me in tryouts. They'll still hold the glove here. They're not even trying to work down and work up through it and, push it back into the middle of the zone. And Bryan was a former umpire. He don't need that glove work to tell if it was a ball or a strike. I do think that it could impact, at the younger levels, but I don't think that the umpires need, so much of that movement. But I think I've always told my catchers to be small, and even I, as a big guy, when I was probably 245 in high school, my senior year as a catcher, I would just try to sit back as much as I could. And so I wouldn't get into these secondary positions to throw guys out. I was always in the same squat, in, out, up, down, it didn't matter. I was always in the same position. I was just flexible enough I could get out of them. I was athletic enough as a big guy to be able to explode out of that. And so I think we get into positions what makes it easy for my kids, and I think that promotes some laziness. I hated the knee saver things. Mm-hmm. I thought that was the
that's
waste.
Yeah, well, and we can go down rabbit holes with this. I mean, as the saying, so I'm trying to just listen and see what your perspective is on it, whatever. But we're me particularly, that's what I pride myself on. I'm progression driven, and so there has to be a process, and there has to be a way that these kids are setting up. So even when we were talking about Benito Santiago and Tony Pena, any kind of kickstand position or anything like that, dude, I'll throw it out to the wolves. It doesn't matter to me. I don't want you to do it because it's not productive, and you're going to spend 75% of your time behind the plate in a secondary stance when it's important, when there's runners on base, when there's two strikes. So you have to be in a triple threat position. You have to be in a position you can move all the time from. So whenever I go and I teach younger kids, I always teach them what we would consider a triple threat or our standard secondary position from one knee, because there's a secondary position from one knee down too. Yep. Where you have to be on the inside part of your shin guard. Right, you have to be anchored down to the ground with your anchor foot. If not, you're not going to be able to pop. You're not going to be able to grab ground to get up. Right, and then you're not also going to grab ground to actually transition from one knee down into your traditional secondary if you want to. So there's all kinds of stuff we could talk about if we wanted to get into it. I'm sure people, I don't know how interesting that would be, particularly to have everybody hear that stuff. But
I mean, we have catchers that watch, and I think that's a big thing too. Is even the coaches the adults that watch this show that are coaching. We have a lot of coaches that don't understand the pieces, and I still let my kids catch on the one knee because I do believe that they can steal some of them strike zones when they get down there. I think that the target in general changes. It becomes a not such a big target. It becomes smaller, so it's more narrow focus by the time they let the baseball go. When that catcher is that small, because I think that's what part of it's for. If I'm thinking on the pitching side of it,
I mean, I would look at it like this: that drive receiving is literally like using your hands, right? So you want to keep your shoulders still as possible, because that presentation with your shoulder squared up to the pitcher, no matter what you're doing, you're leaning out and you're getting strikes from reaching out and grabbing the ball. No matter what anybody says about their deep turns and frame and breaking balls and stuff like that, you want to get extended. You want to get through the ball, right? You want to beat the ball there. You want to get through it. So that's the reason why you're seeing this would be my opinion, but I think that's probably the reason why you're seeing larger size catchers, bigger, more athletic catchers now, because they're taking up more space. They don't have to move. See, Major League, this is verifiable, with the Atlanta Braves for sure. It's a vertical strike zone. It's not a lateral strike zone. So these guys are just sitting up, barely moving. They're catching corners, right? They're making turns and they're catching edges. By the way that they're setting up with their angles, they're not really setting up laterally inside and outside anymore, because you don't really need to if your pitcher can spot the ball. Now, this is all contingent of whether or not your pitcher can spot the ball.
Sure.
Because if you can't spot, one knee down stance doesn't really do anything for you because you're going to have a lot of errant pitches, or you're going to have a lot of errant like plays where balls are getting past you, and you're not going to get a lot of strikes doing it. So like nothing is going to work if the pitcher doesn't have an element of accuracy to it.
Yeah, you really got me there with the. So we did your daughter play softball? Mm-hmm. So my big thing growing up was movement, right?
So
like
you're
movement to the quarters.
Yeah,
just those different things, and now like you see this, and there's again going back to data. This happened at the University of Arkansas where they charted like 40,000 pitches in the strike zone, or middle of the strike zone, and like middle, the batting average was less than you think. Because you don't throw the ball middle, but what happens as a hitter, you get all excited. Their catchers never moved. They literally threw to the corner, and all they do is they bring it back in, go out and get it, whatever. They didn't move to the corners. And so I actually had a friend bring this up to me, and I was like, no, man, you got to get out there. You got to get that right shoulder on the outside corner to the righty or inside so that we can try to catch it in the middle of the chest. And I'm like, nah. And I never really thought about it until just now the way that you said it to me makes sense. And that's what I think is good about bringing on different mindsets or just different approaches to things, because I think in my mind I'm saying the right thing or saying the same thing. Now this a few years ago I'm like, you got to get over there, everything's got to get over there to bring it back so it looks like it's in the middle of your chest, because that's what we're that's where we catch it,
you're
pull
talking
it, whatever.
about like umpires, they see that movement,
yeah,
right? So they see that movement, they're not going to give it to you anyway, right? And I mean, you can literally, so I literally do, when we start talking about this stuff with these kids, I have them come behind us, and I'm like, hey, listen, I'm going to put this ball 8 inches off the outside part of the plate. And if I do this, are you going to give it to me? Or my shoulder breaks. Or if I do this, are you going to give it to me? And everyone's, I'm going to give it to you this way every time, because I'm not moving. The less movement, right? And that's why they do all the isolation drills and stuff. Like putting the chair around backwards and just like draping your shoulders over and working to the middle of the ball. Just anything you can do to be as still as possible, because what you're doing is when you turn your hips, you're creating leverage. So if you turn your hips this way and you're facing back towards the plate, and you come over this way, you've got good leverage to pull it back in, to frame the pitch, and vice versa from the other side. So we want to get as much leverage as possible, because there's a lot of hand movement, it's a lot of arm driven, and that's like the VRX, like was it VPX or VRX belts?
Yeah.
You've seen the belt work and stuff like that. It's because they want these guys to be super strong with their hands and their wrists and their forearms, because there's not going to be a lot of movement with your body when you're trying to make these moves.
I actually think that there is a brand, which being P2, I think this might be something you might look into. I think it's actually P2O Catching website. I could be wrong. It's been a while. They actually sent me a band that's not like the VPX, because and it may have changed, but VPX used to only have the longer bands that you would hip. You go from the hips to the ankles. I don't know. If
No. I think it's called VRX, and it's a belt, and it's got like a little bungee cord on. You wrap it around your wrist.
So they got a smaller version now.
Yeah.
I got you.
Right.
So when I first started messing with them, we would do it for our pitchers, and it was always from the hip to
right.
to the.
I don't know if it's the same brand or whatever, but I got a whole book bag full of them. I just don't remember what the name of
them. But that stuff again, like the tools that we have, the little catching glove, that little thing that's got the web in it. I mean, I'm not involved in the catching side anymore as like I am on the pitching side of things. There was a necessity to kind of change my approach from hitting to the pitching side. So I have been out of the game as far as technique and things for or gadgets, if you will, for the catching side. But I think what people need to understand is, and this is what you said to me, so I got to try to learn this with my guys, is the movement thing. I would tell them that, get out there and work around, and literally replaying just games and watching catchers move, there is minimal movement at the highest levels being played. And now I still go back to the argument of youth baseball because of the inconsistencies in youth baseball, but we're not terribly inconsistent for the most part at the AA and higher levels. They're within an arm's reach, and if you can have an arm's reach, then you should be able to catch the baseball. Yes, you're going to have maybe 5 or 6 pitches a game that are going to be out there, but those were probably pitches you never were going to handle anyways. So I'm kind of digging this thought process of maybe changing my thought process of moving my catcher so much. Yeah, because again, it's an arm's.
So I always tell them that you're confined by the whites in the batter's box.
So
if you're in the inside, It's kind of square. I mean, like, you got a catcher's box, but it's still relative. Like, I'm just saying you don't go any further. You never set anything up on the opposite side batter's box or on, the batter's side batter's box.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like, so you're confined with that space. You just have to hit angles, right? So, I tell all the kids, like, everything that on your body that you have is a tool. There's something there for it, right? So it's like your chest protector is never ever going to like sway away or turn from the pitcher. That's their target. That's your target to point at them. Everything else is hips. So like we want to create angles with our hips and then get leverage from that, right?
Yeah, big athletic guys.
Yeah. So I
got to think for my big guys.
That's all. But I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, like we can say, and I totally get your point and everything like that. But like at the same time, it's like that's the game in general. Right? Like there's gonna be some kids that can do it and some kids that can't.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, like if you got a big clunky catcher that doesn't move really well and he's just back there for a backstop anyway, then he's not going to be a good catcher anyway.
Yeah, he'll end up being if he can hit, he's going to be a DH or a first baseman.
Right, exactly. So we want to make sure that the stuff that we do and we got we've been doing for about 2 years now, and all the kids that come, they're kind of regulars. They come and they come frequently and they're into it. And I think everybody needs to have some element of training. I like to have the parents come and sit and listen, and especially if they're involved in coaching anyway and stuff like that. So try to educate them a little bit. And I got some people, they come in and they videotape the whole sessions and go home and work on them, and you can see an absolute humongous difference in what the kids are trying to do, right?
Yeah, they still have to go home and work.
They got to
you just cannot go to you one time a week for an hour. Are you a 30-minute session guy?
I'm an hour-long guy because I talk too much. Believe it or not, I talk way too much. So it's like, especially going forward, we were thinking about adding in like 30-minute sessions for like the older kids for like training, like after you kind of know the program. But like our whole thing's based on progression. So like when I give hitting lessons, when I give catching lessons, I mean, like, dude, like the first couple of times you come in, that's all we're doing is talking. And I kind of forewarn them that ahead of time. It's like, you have to build a language with me. We have to know what's going on here before I can show you how to do anything. So I usually start at the beginning and I work all the way through to the end.
Don't you think that also builds a little bit of the IQ too? Because I'm going to assume that the reason why you talk is so that you can help build the thought process that goes behind each thing that you're asking to do of that athlete. Because
I think I talk most of the time because someone listens when they pay me money, so they can't go anywhere afterwards. But other than that, yeah. Like
that's not the only reason.
I mean, but you want to know, you want to know where they're at. You want to know. You have to have a good understanding of where they're at. So, like, we're talking about like Steve, right? So me and you both know Steve well. So he's come to my academy last couple weeks, and so we had a conversation. I'm not putting him on the spot or anything, but he's like, man, like, you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. He's like, I go E, F, G. He's like, I need to learn A, B, C. And I mean, but that's the thing is like, you got to start, right? And you got to have that you talk it, you teach it, and then you train it, right? And if you don't have that training, if you don't have that teaching piece in there, that teaching element, then you're just picking up somebody else's junk. So like, I always tell them all the time, it's like, you do what you're supposed to do, no matter if you're successful or not. You can say my name all day long, but if you don't do what I tell you to do, because there's a lot of kids that come in and they'll look really, really, really good, and then their parents will send me a video later on. I'm like, oh, that was really, really, really bad. I'm like, just don't speak my name out of your mouth, because I mean, legit.
That's
because
funny.
It's like you got to put the work in and you got to retain the information.
Yeah.
And so like the more they do it, but I'm going to tell you like what my college coach told me is like, Bryan, the difference between my 12U teams and my 14U teams and the 18U teams and on and on and on college. It's like I didn't say anything different to any of the kids any of the time. I just didn't drop as many F-bombs. He's like, it's just all the same information all day long. And when they pick it up, right? And that's why it's a marathon, it's not a race. Man.
Yeah, I struggle. That's one thing I struggle with in the younger groups, because I felt like at the 14U age group that I was advanced in between the ears in the game because I watched it a lot. I played with baseball cards. I guess I didn't play with baseball cards. It's not what you do. I collected baseball cards and read information on the back. So I felt like the history of the game was important to me. I felt like watching the game was important. I felt like learning from the TV helped me. That to me was a rep. That was a day's rep. If I couldn't get outside or I was in trouble or something, but I got to watch TV, like the baseball game was on. And so I got to listen to, Joe Buck growing up and talk about the game of baseball. And when they fail, this is why I like Jim Edmonds. I'm not going to say he's a great color guy, but I like the way that Jim Edmonds goes about saying, like, why did he do that? And then the question was asked. And that's what I like about talking. I changed up mine. I used to do 30-minute sessions. Every lesson was 30 minutes, mostly because I hit, and I don't think hitting for an hour was worth it. But I wanted to get in and get out, right? And I wanted to get the next kid in. And I got to thinking about it. I'm like, why am I not progressing fast enough? because they do a good job for me for 30 minutes. Well, they don't do nothing else for the rest of the week. There's not a program, there's not a plan, there's nothing like that happening. And so I had to reevaluate what I was doing. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to do 2 times a week sessions. Did those for 30 minutes. All I was a batting practice coach. I was just throwing BP because mom and dad couldn't.
Yeah.
I had to change my philosophy. And I talk now more. I got 1.5-hour sessions. I spend 45 minutes probably having conversations. And I've got to the point where we'll start to sweat a little bit, and then we'll have conversations. We got to re-warm up almost. Just because I want to build the mental side of the game, and it's important to understand the why to these kids. I think to us it was, I don't know that we ever asked those questions. Maybe we were afraid.
No, I think that's exactly the reason why I do what I do is because I remember, like, dude, I'm a product of bad coaching. I'm a product of good athleticism, bad coaching, because I didn't have a lot of it. And I'll tell you, like, so I remember these guys giving me drills to do, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea, right? And so, like, that starts resonating with you, and then you start having kids, and, like, you start wanting to teach them and stuff, and you start going, why do I do this? Like, why am I able to do this, but they're not able to do that?
Yeah.
And then that's where that whole disconnect comes from, right? It's like, well, what am I really learning, and what am I really teaching, and where does this really fall within the spectrum of what's going on? And that's so relative, like with hitting for sure. And catching, like I said, I can't knock anybody for whatever they teach as far as, like, with the 1D down stuff and everything, because it's like I said, it's relatively new, but there's certain things to me that just make sense.
Yeah.
And we try to stick with the things that make sense.
Right.
And lo and behold, most of the time, like when I start preaching it and I'm online, I don't know if they have like some kind of video recording on my phone or whatever, then you'll start seeing videos pop up, people start mentioning it or whatever the case may be. But that just might be the intellectual like progression of what's going on with it or whatever, So a lot of the things are very, very similar. You kind of got to look at it like this. Anything you're doing on 1D down, you're just cutting your time in half. So, like if you got a block, you're going to block to the right, you're already halfway there when you're 1 knee down. So then you're just kind of picking up the continuum, you're picking up that move on continuum, right? So it's not really that much different, especially if you kind of always kind of compare it back to like what your primary and your secondary stances are. And then you can kind of start getting kids into really good stances and really good, really, good ways to maneuver their bodies. And I just tell them every single time they come in, it's like, dude, if you saw, like, especially like when we do the academy down at Nationals, like the first 6 week is it's in-house, it's for all Nationals kids. I have, I feel like I have like an obligation to like push it a little bit harder, make sure that they understand the things. So I'm not saying that like all of our camps are super good, but I'm saying usually if somebody comes in just for a 2-day camp with us or whatever, we're showing them a lot of drill work to take home, and then with hopes that they'll come and train with us, right? But for this, it's like we have to kind of train them as they go. And I said, man, listen, we spent a whole day, like the whole session, the first session this year, just on stance work, because all their stances were horrible. I'm like, dude, if you're not in a good stance, it doesn't matter how good of a catcher you are, it doesn't matter how good of a receiver you are, blocker or thrower you are, you're not going to do anything because you can't move, right? So we want to make sure we get them in good athletic position, make sure they get to where they need to be, right?
I think people forget about just because they throw kids back there because they can maybe catch a ball better than somebody else, so they throw them a mask and some gear. And I took a lot of pride in catching. I took a lot of pride in being a triple threat guy. I actually, speaking of Steve, we were just talking about it again the other day. When Steve caught for us on the spikes, used to drive me crazy. It'd be like a 0-1 count, right? He'd try to throw a split finger and it'd be off the right shin pad. He just, if he couldn't pick it, then he didn't care to hit the backstop, and the guy on deck would have to go get it. It used to drive me crazy. And then he was like, well, why do I need to save my bullets for when there's a runner at third base. And, obviously we're older, so we couldn't necessarily move as well. But I'm thinking, man, like, you got to block every single ball. You got to do this. Now, to me, that was just a mentality thing, right? That's how I wanted to abuse my body, whatever. But then when I thought about it, I was like, you know what? You see it in the big leagues. If you got a guy with nobody on and the ball's pitched 3 feet outside,
they just try to pick it and let it go. Right?
And if they can't, like, just small things like that. And just even hearing you have that conversation today, I'm just thinking about how much I focus on the mobility side of the game, because I don't want my catchers being stuck,
right.
And no matter the stance, like, they could be on a knee and get stuck where they can't, you said they're already halfway. When I'm thinking about how I caught, I never just sat there and went. I had some sort of flow or rhythm in the body, even if it was very little, very subtle. It never really felt like I was moving like this. I still had, if I called an outside pitch, I was kind of prepping for it.
Right. And that's where all your loading and stuff comes in,
Yeah.
your glove load and everything, and your rhythm too. I mean, like I said, like this whole game is nothing but rhythm. It is. It doesn't matter. It's rhythm between the pitcher and the batter, pitcher and the catcher, infielders and the ball put in play, infielders amongst infielders. Like if you don't have good rhythm, nothing's going to work for you, right? So
Yep.
like your glove load with receiving is the exact same thing as your stride in hitting, right? Or your rhythmic, your separation when you throw. Like everything has to sync up, and if it doesn't sync up and you're not in rhythm with the pitcher, then you're not going to be very good anyway, because we're going to drive those angles back home.
Yep.
And if you can't get there and you can't cheat a little bit, right? So like if we're calling for an outside pitch, we load a little bit to the right. If we have called an inside pitch, we load a little bit to the left, right? And so we just get in that good rhythm and that good flow. It's just that you're trying to. The biggest thing for me, as far as like stealing pitches and being in a good position to always be behind the ball, is to get out. So we want the kids to get out. We don't want them to set angles outward. Like, so we don't want them to reach out. We want them to lean and posture out, right? So there's a lot of posture that's involved with your setup and your stance work too. I think a lot of people neglect, but it's definitely there. If you start putting an eye on it, you can see it quite a bit with the MLB players and college guys and stuff like that.
Yeah, all the way down. No doubt, all the way down. And I think kids are way more athletic these days in general, with all the information we do have. And I'm just thinking about my group, and right now I'm like, okay, in my head I have an idea of what I think we should be doing now, and my focus kind of shifted just in that conversation. So if you're a ball coach,
you can have me come out to your group.
I gotta pay you though.
And for certain, like I will come out and show you every single thing that I know. Like,
well, I'm gonna get the chance to see
like,
you.
There are no secrets.
Well, that's what's interesting is like there is no secret. Like we've been catching. This game's been played a long, long time. And I think it's just the adapting, change, be willing to change, be willing to listen. Because, when I talk to Steve sometimes, I'm like, man, we're, again, in conversations we have, sometimes we're both alphas in how we believe. And I'm like, you know what, let me pump the brakes a little bit, shut my mouth and just listen. And I think that, I could have been coaching for 20 years, and I've been coaching for 20 years. And you just gave me information that I felt like was good for me. And it's not even the information that you think was great for me. I'm literally thinking about I go back to this thing, it's about setting up here and, loading to your right, loading to your left, kind of thinking about those things and training that mindset. And I'm thinking about, we don't do that from the shortstop position. We don't do that from the third base position because people don't anticipate ball movement. And so I'm trying to think about how I can incorporate all this conversation into just the game in general and how to read stuff. Because I thought that was what made me a good catcher, is I understood spin. I understand where I needed to be with spin. I learned from Steve. Like I used to catch the curveballs way out in front of me, stiff as a board. And Steve was like, nope, catch that curveball in certain positions. Catch that thing deep to try to get a little bit more break, see if we can, the umpire might get that. And I never thought about those things, and I just got things done. But again, as you got older, when I got into college, it was a little bit different. That's probably why as a freshman I wasn't behind the dish, because I wasn't as skilled as those other guys. I didn't have mobility, or the thought process wasn't there. And I'm going back to those days in 1998 when I was at Missouri Western, and I'm thinking about those guys' movement patterns, how much they moved corner to corner or how little. And I'm thinking, man, I did miss the boat, but that's fine, right? Because I think what's cool about this show is that I get a chance to learn from people.
Well, and I tell you what, so that's right in congruence with how I feel in general about baseball. Like my failures are everybody else's successes. Like, what I'm saying? Like I wouldn't be sitting here right now if I was just completely successful with everything that I did, right? But my fuel was that I wanted to make sure that the kids that I coached, particularly my kids starting out, but now it's progressed into what it is now. That they at least know the things that I had a deficit in, so they're better at me in that area, right? So if you start there and you go, hey, listen, I'm going to teach my kids every single thing that I did really, really bad because I know better now, and you're going to be in real good shape. And I
like that.
And that's the reality of it is so real good high school baseball player, exceptionally good high school baseball player, average college player, That doesn't mean I can't be a fantastic coach, right? So that's why we're here, and that's the reason why we do what we do. So
that is why we do what we do, man. I love giving back. We've talked about that. That's the purpose of this show, is the community side of it. And we're obviously a stranglehold in the community. And I again, it just goes back to the people that are driving this, I think they need to have more confidence. You don't need a young 22-year-old that's fresh out of college. They don't have those experiences. I didn't have those experiences when I was 22 years old. The Jaws was on the show, I think, with Darren Sissel a few weeks back, and he was one of the guys that gave me my first opportunities to train. And I remember telling him, I was like, "You paid me $10 an hour, man, back then." I was like, "Dude, back then I was upset because I could have pushed carts at Home Depot for $15, but." I got to thinking about it. I was like, there was a reason why I had to start where I started. I had to learn. And I can't just go in, and even though I'm a good player, I can't expect I know how to teach. And like you said, my failures are other people's successes. I have failed a ton in the coaching side. And I'm like, I'm not going to make that same mistake twice, because that's what my dad always taught me growing up. It's all right to make mistakes, just don't make it twice. And so I learned from them, and so then I can get to pass that information on. And you're right, that is my job.
Well, so my daughter's 23 years old, and she just got her first coaching job. Right, she graduated from Truman State, played 4 years of softball up there, and got a graduate degree in the meantime because of COVID and all that stuff. And so she just got her first assistant coaching job at was it Waldorf University or something like that in Iowa. It's NAI.
Waldorf.
That's it, Waldorf University. Man, I cringe.
Because she's so young.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead. Because she was in.
Is she a GA there, or is she she's an
she's
assistant
coach, and so the thing about Cameron, she was always in the right spot at the right time. She knew the game, but frontwards and backwards. But I'm not 100% sure Cameron knows how to teach the game, right? And so that's the whole piece is having that maturity and being able to just take a step back and just whatever route you have to take to do that, right? Dude, I'm a baseball lifer, but dude, I spent 20 years on the railroad, right? So I had to do this part-time. I didn't do this full-time until a couple of years ago when I was fortunate enough to be able to do so. So it's like, what do you, in the meantime, you have to continue on with your journey, right? And if you don't stay up with what you're doing and you don't try to kind of roll with the punches and try to incorporate all this stuff, no matter if it's metrics, the newer school technology stuff versus old school, whatever the case may be, you're going to be left behind in some of this stuff. And unfortunately, that's just the way that it is. So that's kind of where the whole social media thing was for me. Is dude, I didn't even have a Facebook account. I didn't have anything. I didn't do any of that stuff. I'm not a big computer guy or whatever. And everybody's like, "Hey, dude, listen, you gotta get on page. You gotta do this stuff and everything." It's because if you don't, you're gonna miss out. And it's not because you're not a good provider, and it's not because you can't do the things that
you get left behind.
You get left behind, right? So you got to be able to take all of it in and just kind of, I tell everybody, I said, anything that I give them is a gift. So once I give it to you, it's yours. You can throw it in the trash can. You put it in your back pocket. You can use it every single day. I don't care, but it's a gift to you because I'm just telling you everything that I know. I'm just one person, right? I'm not the be-all, end-all expert on anything because I don't think anybody is.
Right.
But we can do it a certain way, and if we have success and we have results doing it, you know what I'm saying? We've got some pretty good pedigree. We got some kids. There are plenty of girls. So same as you. I coached girls softball for 10 years, right? I got a ton of D1 softball girls that are just finishing up now. We got Kelsey Etling out of SLU that works with us right now, gets lessons with us now. My daughter Kirsten Nixon went to Tennessee Martin. A bunch of good girls that we coached there, and then fortunately I got a shift from softball back to baseball with my boys, and so now I'm back in the arena that I'd rather be in. But regardless, we're producing kids that are doing a good job, and they're starting to get noticed from what we've been showing them. So that's
I didn't know Nixon was yours.
Yeah. So Rich Nixon and me are
I had no idea. Just because my daughter, you talk about being a young father. I was a father at 15, or found out I was going to be a dad at 15 years old. So when you said young, I was like, how young is young?
Right. Not that young, but still pretty young enough for me.
So mine coaches with the Chaos now, and I love the giving back because it's she understands the new community of athletes, and I do not. I struggle with the old fashioned. Do what I say, kind of. Mm-hmm. I'm not really like that. I do try to do my best to be somebody you can talk to.
Kids are just different.
Yeah, and I'm like, I was pretty tough on her, and so there's some things that she brings in a little bit of that softer side. I wouldn't let music happen. Mm-hmm. I hated it, and I didn't think we were good enough to have music before the game. And what I learned about with girls was, they have to have fun in order to win. Where guys, it's we have to win to have fun, kind of thing.
Right.
And I was like, all right, let me play the radio, and I was like, okay, and one cuss word, it shuts off for, the whole weekend. We can't. So I had to, use some accountability still in there. but she's good at mixing both toughness and the love side of it. And I hope she continues to coach. I don't think she'll ever expand outside of maybe the club ball. She may be done after this group graduates because they're 18 years old. But that's when she first started. She was that shy kid that sat in the back, just listened to the head coach who had some college coaching experience, which I'm sure your daughter's going to do at Waldorf. She'll probably sit back and listen, and then one day she's going to get the keys to the car, and she's going to have to drive practice, and it's going to be nerve-wracking. But again, I'm hoping that she's got the right head coach because I think that's important.
I just told her if she ends up doing that and she calls me, that she's going to have to pay me. Right.
See, I get some of your salary. I want
exactly.
I want the in 401k options and stuff. They probably get.
That's the reality of it, man. Is like they just they got to learn on their own. That and like just like we did.
You have to fail.
Yeah.
You 100% have to fail. Man, Bryan, thank you.
Hey, absolutely.
This has been awesome. I'm gonna have to get you back on the show. I know we talked about a lot about catching. But that was the purpose of bringing you on, is I wanted to talk catching. It's something we've never done really on the show. We always talk about hitting and pitching, and the catching side was something that I wanted to get on there. And really a lot of it had to do with the influence on social media. And I know we work together, and you come in the building. We have a camp coming up late December. The holidays, we're going to work together again in there. And, you talk to Jamal, which has brick wall catching out of there. So I think all of this is just a big community of coaches, trying to provide for our athletes to get better. So I'm gonna bring you on again. We got some regulars that we're doing with Shane Eames and Cody Massey over there, and why not have another regular?
I won't sweat as much next time.
If we wear a short sleeve shirt, we got these bright lights on us that make us look good.
No, man, I appreciate it. It's fun. So
yeah, how can what socials are you on?
Big one's TikTok. That's my first go. So it's P2. It's P2 Army Baseball, but it's got dots in there. P2.Army.baseball.
Search it.
Yeah, search it. I've got a pretty big following on Facebook for all the older people because we're old and that's where everybody hangs out or whatever. And then I've got an Instagram account which is the same P2 Army Baseball, and put all of our stuff on all three of them. So, but check us out, and it is what it is.
Well, content. I think that's good because you see the content and then how you interact with kids. It is a way to just vet coaches. We talk about it always on the show. When it's tryout season, vet your coach. Well, you can get a lot of information from vetting your instructor by watching how he interacts. And it's mostly all the good stuff, but you have that. So, but just to throw this, go ahead.
P2Army.com.
That's your website.
Yeah, and that's where you do all your schedule and everything. You buy packages there. Come see me, and we'll train.
Yeah, there you go.
And not to mention, I will tell you this: catching is my niche. We love to hit too, so come on, because we do a lot of cool stuff.
I'm gonna have to come down. I actually have to follow you on the hitting side. I don't really. Anytime I see one of your hitting videos, and then this is nothing against you, I'm like, whoop, right to your catching videos. Just because I like the vibe that you have on the catching side, and maybe it's because I pitched or I hit too, so like that doesn't, whatever to me. And but the catching stuff I like. I love just going through your catching stuff. So, but just a real quick, Red Earth Productions, we can help you out with. You need some media stuff.
Fair enough.
Just make sure that we end the show with making sure Red Earth gets spelled out.
I'm not trying to pitch anybody.
No.
He's
well,
a
it happens.
nice guy.
No, I mean that's the thing. There's been marketing teams built all around, and it's a lot of it's dealt with friendships, and that's how I think my relationship with Bryan is it's much more than just sitting in here doing a podcast. Right. It's become a trust thing. Like we can count on each other. We can talk to each other about personal things. I sat in here with him for 4 hours the other day. It felt like I was late to everything, talking about Jesus, talking about God, and I wasn't prepared for that. And I'm not a big holy roller, if you will, but I do have some things inside my chest that make me feel good, and I needed it that day because I was on a roller coaster. I walked in, I was like, dude, I'm all fired up, and I did the show. We had a conversation. I walked out. I was like, I needed that.
Feel a little better. Yeah.
Needed that. So, Faith Loop, right? Do you have a podcast, Bryan, that's called The Faith Loop? I think you can go out and find that. Hitting Zone. You can Google us. We're on social media as well, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I'm not on TikTok all the time, but you can find this show on Youth Baseball Midwest on YouTube. Make sure you go subscribe. There's a dinger there. It's called the Hitting Zone, but the dinger is on the youth baseball because that's what we do. We hit dingers and we block pitches. We're triple threats, right?
There you go.
Receive, block pitches, throw people out. I always like to throw people out. That was my favorite part of the game.
We like throwing.
I don't know what it was, but if I got 2 chances, let me throw a dart and get you. But anyways, go check out P2 Catching. Make sure you follow us on all our socials here at Youth Baseball Midwest, and have a great day in the Lord, as Bryan would say. I try to mimic that. I don't have no closing statement. So anyways, have a great day, and we'll see you next week.